We released our first disc, the inner core, exactly 3 years ago this week. So I thought it'd be fun to share a story that we've never shared before. And it all starts with this super Domey inner core that we accidentally made 3 years ago. Just listen to this. And yes, I've been waiting to throw it till this video. So to talk about the Superdome inner core, we actually have 5 different versions of the inner core that were all made within a month and a half of one another, but they're all completely different. And it all starts with, I don't know why I don't have them in order, this one. When I first set out to make a disc from 100% recycled plastic and learned about TPU, aka thermoplastic polyurethane, one of the things I did not know was that TPU is practically a suction cup. And specifically when it comes to discs, this shape right here and the way it molds around the steel mold itself basically just makes this plastic want to suction to the mold as hard as possible. So in the first few days, actually probably the first few hours of making the inner core, we started to run into a pretty major suction issue. Actually, this one specifically says 10 on the bottom because when they were first coming out, I just started numbering them. So this was literally the 10th one off of the machine. Over the course of a couple of grueling hours, what I ended up learning is that there are actually different designs and things you can do inside of molds to help discs and other products eject from them. So on a mold, this side is called the cavity and this side is called the core. And what kept happening was this disc would just get stuck to the core and was practically impossible to get off. So over the course of that day, we tried a handful of things, but really nothing was successful. And at the time, we were working with a local contract manufacturer here in Denver. So it was another injection molding company who had all of the expertise, and they were kind of walking me through it. And their suggestion, based on it not working, was to add a thing called an air poppet. Basically, what an air poppet does is when the mold opens, it also pops some air in a specific point right as the mold is opening so that the part just pops out. And basically that meant a full modification to a brand new mold that I had just paid $25,000 for. So it wasn't the most appealing idea, but because this was going so poorly and because we spent a couple days after that just trying to get it resolved, I eventually said, okay, let's do it. So that's when we moved from inner core 1.0 to inner core 2.0. If you look at your inner core at home, you might notice that it has this little circle right here. And if we go back to inner core 1.0, you'll notice there's no circle. And that is because that little circle is the air poppet, the little modification we made to a very expensive mold that didn't work. Unfortunately, what we didn't expect was that the suction still happened. So every time a disc would come off the machine, it would actually stay right inside the mold. And eventually that increased air pressure actually made the suction even worse, which led to something that I still cannot believe happened. Basically, the mold would open, the inner core was stuck to the mold, the air pressure would actuate, and the inner core would blow up like a balloon. I will never, my ears are still ringing from the pop. It would blow like the size of a basketball and then pop. And the whole facility, like everyone who worked there would turn their heads every single time. It was so bad. Luckily, I ended up saving one of those discs, which is where the Superdome inner core comes from. It is crazy to look at them side by side. I can't even tell you how this thing feels, and I will throw it soon, but the story is not over quite yet. What I ended up learning from the Superdome inner core was that the surface finish of the mold, like the texture of the mold itself, actually plays a pretty key role in injection molding. And then that role only gets amplified when working with soft plastics like TPU. So then our injection molder suggested we actually bead blast the bottom half of the mold, because that little bit of texture on the mold itself would basically create valleys, if you will, that would allow air between the steel and the plastic, which would allow the disc to demold. But all I heard was that's another modification to an already really expensive mold that would actually change how the final product felt. But since we made this in late October of 2022 and the release of the inner core was the very beginning of November 2022, we really had no options. So enter inner core 3.0, where now you can see that the bottom is a little bit more of a matte finish, while the top still has that glossy finish. Actually, here's 2.0 again, so you can see how glossy the bottom side of the disc is, and then here's 3.0. The change to 3.0 actually ended up working and creating a new problem, which of course it did. Now we were able to get the disc off of the core side of the mold, but you guessed it, it started sticking to the cavity. Now, sticking to the cavity wasn't the worst thing ever because we were still able to get it off. But at that point, we started to ask the question, if the core was already bead blasted, why not just bead blast the rest of the mold? Because if it helped us eject the disc from the core, hypothetically, it helps for the rest of the mold as well. Which brings us to inner core 4.0, where you have the bead blasted texture on the bottom, as well as on the rest of the disc. And crazy enough, that ended up working so well, it rendered the air poppet completely unnecessary. Plus, I think that texture ended up with a better feeling inner core as well. And what all of that means is that if you were one of the first 10,000 people to get the inner core, then you could have either version 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, or 4.0. I still cannot believe that all of those are out in the world. And I also can't believe that we ran into those problems, because now, you know, we know enough that we wouldn't run into those problems. But I guess that's the price of learning. And I guess since 4.0 is out in the world now, if you're one of the people with 1, 2, or 3.0, then it just became that much more exclusive. But since there is only one Superdome in existence, we're all thinking it. How the heck does it fly? I genuinely have no idea what to expect. I'm thinking it's just gonna be flippy, but I wanna throw it the exact same as a stock inner core. So control, regular, basic, not Superdome inner core first. Yep, that's an inner core. Oh, go in. Oh, oh. I was not expecting that at all. All right, it's the moment we've all been waiting for. The Superdome inner core. I'm gonna throw it the exact same. I'm gonna try to throw it the exact same. No way. What? Outside of being terribly uncomfortable, it seems it flies the exact same. Now I feel like I need a couple more shots with it, especially because a Superdome Ace would be insane. I'm just gonna tell myself it's an inner core. I'm gonna try to throw it exactly like an inner core without thinking about the Superdome. That is wild. You have got to be kidding me. All right, let's push it a little further. 300 on the dot with some downhill. I can't. No. What is happening? Is it good? I never expected it to fly. Like, I never really thought about how it was gonna fly, but I never expected it to be great. It's just crazy. Well, we didn't get the Ace today, but we were close. And since this was a video about a story we've never talked about before with the inner core, there's one more little teaser. And that's that the second we released the inner core, the outer core was always gonna be a thing.